Public Service Commission Chairman Dan Scripps. He's been on the show before. Welcome back.
Thanks, Mike. Good to be back with you.
Yeah. Well, I have to tell you, when I got that mailer and then wrote that story, I was tracking how many people clicked on the link, and there was thousands of people that clicked on that link. And then I got all the comments. And so I won't give you all the comments. Some of them were a little off color, but they were not happy about this and they didn't understand this. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to explain this. Now,
No,
I have that. Matt Helm sent me over the backgrounder, but instead of reading that out or anything, let's kind of sum it up. Time-based rates. That's brand new in Michigan, although I know you guys have been talking about it for a while. And it's not just DTE down here in southeast Michigan, it's everybody that generates electricity in the state, if I got that right, right?
yeah, at least on a voluntary basis. So, as a default rate, it's now in place for both Consumers Energy and DTE. So, the two largest by far electric providers. But a number of others have had these in certain applications. For example, to tie back to your previous guest, for on electric vehicles, a lot of them have offered rates with a discounted charging rate at night to try and encourage charging when the energy is cheap and not when it's more expensive and puts additional strain on the grid. So we have had these for a while, and in fact, going back further than that, I was talking to a state senator about this issue 2 weeks ago, and he was saying that he remembers when he was a kid, they had these, or at least for farms. He's a farmer from the Thumb area, and so it's sort of everything old is new again in some regards. But this one definitely has gotten people's attention, and it's. But I think at the end of the day, it really does do two things. First, it sends better price signals in terms of when the electricity is more expensive to procure, when there's greater strain on the grid. And so helping to better align what people pay with what they're actually using. And second, for the folks who are budget conscious, and that includes a number of us, it actually allows them to save money by shifting some of their consumption to off-peak times when the energy is cheaper. And just to give you one example, Consumers Energy was piloting this in a number of communities around the state, including the Kalamazoo area where my in-laws live. And right there above their washing machine, they had the time of use schedule that don't do the laundry before 7 p.m. or make sure that it's done before 3 in the afternoon. And I think those kind of behavioral changes for those who are looking to shape their consumption in order to save some money provides the opportunity to do that.
Let me do a quick follow up, Matt.
Okay.
One of the comments that I got from a lot of people was, "What about summertime when it's a Michigan summer and it's 95 degrees, and then right at that peak time from 3 to 7 is when it's the hottest?" I mean, those were the kinds of comments I was getting, So
Yeah, no, and I understand that, but it's also that's also when it's most expensive to buy the electricity, and so for the electric provider. So we have had this thing where it costs the same regardless of when you're using the energy, and the concern is that doesn't give people the information that they need to make decisions that ultimately can benefit both them and the grid as a whole. And so if you want to run your air conditioner full on a hot summer afternoon, you absolutely can do that, but you might pay a little bit more for that versus somebody who's willing to curtail their usage or pre-cool their home. Number of things that you can do with these smart thermostats in order to save a little bit of money. So it allows customers, I think, to make the choice between convenience and paying a little bit more, or shifting their load to off-peak times and saving a little bit more.
All right.
Good.
So just so we know, just so we define our terms here, what days of the week and what times of day is the higher rate going to go into effect?
Sure, there are little differences between the utilities. I think it's 2 to 7 p.m. For consumers and 3 to 7 p.m. for DTE, and it's Monday through Friday. And these are based on sort of when the costs are more. Typically, energy use goes down at the weekends because a lot of the commercial and industrial facilities aren't running as much. And so you see those being cheaper as well. It's sort of like the free nights and weekends that the phone companies used to offer. These provide a higher price during those peak times, but on the discounted times, it also provides a lower price.
So how much will the price difference be? And I know that probably is different for the two major utilities as well.
It is, and that's something that is, when you ask the economists, they say, "Well, maximize those differences to really drive people's choices." And I understand that we've moderated that a little bit, so that it's not quite the shock to the system for those who have less ability to shift when they use.
But roughly how much will the difference be?
I think it's twice as much. It's essentially twice as much.
Okay. All right. What about people who like me, I have the interruptible service for my central air conditioning where I get from DTE, I think it's a 30% price break in exchange for having it on a separate meter, and they can turn it off for 15 or 20 minutes an hour if they want to jiggle the load, to sort of flatten the peak. Will that also be the case for people on interruptible service?
Yeah, and this is just sort of an extension of exactly that program that we've had for a while. If you're willing to have it be shifted when your energy is being used, there's an opportunity to save. The big difference between this and what has existed with, for example, the interruptible air conditioning is that it's you as the customer and not the utility that gets to make those decisions. But it allows essentially more control at the individual customer level.
Okay.
Now, I know other states where I've worked, and I don't know if it's the case here in Michigan, but big users of electricity, big factories like aluminum factories, they sign an agreement that, if the system gets strained, they're gonna brown them out. I mean, is that available in Michigan?
Yeah, we have the same sort of interruptible thing rates that Matt was talking about for residential customers. We have those for industrial customers as well. That they're the first, they can be curtailed in the case of a grid scale shortage. And so you see those, there's different levels of what our regional grid operators, MISO and PJM, will call, and that corresponds to different groups of customers that then can be curtailed. And so it's something where and it's not right for everybody. If you've got a situation where you need that consistent power 24/7, it can never be interrupted, then it's probably not the right rate for you. But for example, I was talking with an iron smelter a couple of years back, and they were saying, you know what, we can be interrupted for 20 minutes, we can be interrupted for 30 minutes, we can be interrupted for 40 minutes, and it's all good. But we can't for 45 minutes, because that's when the molten iron will start to harden, and that can do real damage. But I'd be more than happy to take a break in my power prices to have some level of interruption, as long as it doesn't exceed sort of the specifics of my manufacturing processes. And so this is, again, trying to find ways that people can better manage their energy consumption in a way that ultimately can be more cost effective, both for them and the grid as a whole.
Well, I can see what the answer for me is. It's starting to work second shift, so I'll just do that. So I won't even be in the house from 3 to 11. How about that? So yeah, I mean, do the utilities in Michigan? I've always wondered this too. Do they have enough capacity themselves to meet peak demand, or do they have to go out on the market and buy it from other places, which is way more expensive?
They typically have been in a place where they have all the power that they need. We're getting a little tighter in Michigan and across the Midwest, as some of these plants have been retired in recent years. But we've also been adding a fair amount, including in the consumers case, bringing over a plant that currently serves PJM, bringing it back into MISO, and for DTE, bringing on their first gas-fired power plant last year. They started operation at Blue Water. And so we have, I think, responsibly managed some of the transition, but at this point, the utilities have what they need, both to meet customer needs at the peak and a small reserve margin on top of that.
I do know that ITC, though, is trying to bring in a new line from Indiana, about 100 miles long, because ITC is one of our sponsors, and we've had numerous people from ITC on talking about that. So, of course, that'll take 5-6 years to bring that in. So that's just forward thinking, right?
It is, yeah. That will eventually be a case in terms of the siting that will come before us, because it's a long line, high voltage. But it's something where I think we're starting to think about all the different things, whether it's additional generation, a difference in how consumers ultimately consume their energy, which is what we're talking about here. And then transmission is absolutely a part of that solution set. And I think both at the MISO level and PJM level, and then individual companies like ITC moving forward, we're addressing some of the vulnerabilities that we currently have with the system.
So could more solar help this? I mean, I'm thinking about hot summer days in the afternoon when the sun's out. Could we add more solar to help with this problem as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And both the utilities, in terms of their approved plans, they've got some pending that I can't talk about, but their approved plans add a significant amount of solar. One of the things that we need to be sort of aware of as we go forward is, as you add more and more solar, you may actually shift the peak time on the system from that sort of middle of the day on a hot summer afternoon to 8 o'clock after the sun sets. And
Yeah.
so I think, one of the things that we'll always be reassessing is, are those hours 3 to 7, 2 to 7 the right hours, or as the system changes, do we need to change some of those to better align sort of generation and consumption?
And then, of course, then there's the EV equation, which none of us really understand exactly what's going to happen, because we just had Patrick Anderson address that. It's still pretty nominal, less than 6%. However, they're projecting 25 to 30% by the end of this decade. So that's going to put a tremendous strain on the system, right?
Absolutely. It's definitely, you're starting to see load growth, as we call it in the industry, for the first time in a while. And it really is taking off. I mean, globally, I think it was 10% last year. It's a little less than that in terms of new vehicles sold, a little less than that in the US. But really starting to see, as the automakers offer new models and customers getting more comfortable and familiar with the technology. But one of the interesting things about that is, yes, it will absolutely take more juice in the system, but it also gives us some flexibility in when that is used, even down to just the ability to charge 1 second and maybe not charge the next second in response to some of the sort of normal grid fluctuations. But there's a huge amount of upside potential in terms of electric vehicles on the system, just as a grid benefit. And we need to make sure that we're staying smart and keeping our regulatory framework sort of up to date to make sure that we're best sort of using the technology and also addressing some of the challenges that come with it.
All right. So, in terms of the overall percentage of power that's generated by renewables in Michigan, where are we on that right now, and where are we headed?
So under state law, we need to get 15% of our energy from renewables by the end of 2021, and we hit that, and now we're exceeding that. And we're exceeding it in a couple of ways. So we don't have a mandate that's driving this growth anymore, but there are two things that are happening. The first is we have to do comprehensive planning. We call them integrated resource plans. And we look as part of those plans at what is the optimal mix of resources on both the generation and demand side. And what we're finding is, with the prices continuing to come down for renewables, we're adding more and more renewables as part of those integrated resource plans, even though there's not a state law that's requiring it. The other piece that's really driving renewable growth in Michigan are individual customers who are saying, I want more of my energy to come from renewable resources. And last year, we actually saw DTE sign the largest and second largest deals to procure renewable energy through a utility in US history. Both of the two largest deals ever happened last year, happened in Michigan. One was with Ford and the other was with Stellantis. And so you're seeing these individual customers, both large manufacturing firms, the big three, but also individual homeowners who are saying, I want that as well. And just to give a sense of scale, when you look back at 2017, there were about 100 individual residential customers enrolled in DTE's voluntary renewable energy program. Today, they're adding 500 individual customers a week. So 5 times the total that they had just a couple of years ago being added every week. And I just think that gives a sense of the momentum and the acceleration behind the growth of renewables that's being driven not by state law anymore, but by the preferences of individual customers.
And I know you welcome comments, so why don't you give that address if people have things they want to say to you, hopefully
Absolutely.
Kind things they want to say to you. Where can they go to do that?
So we strongly believe in doing our work in the public as part of the Public Service Commission. You can reach us at commissioners underscore commissioners underscore MI at Michigan.gov. And then you can also reach us on our social media channels. We have a Facebook page, we've got a Twitter page, we've got a LinkedIn page. So any of those provide the opportunity for public comment as well. And yeah, we want to be as fully accessible and transparent to the public as we possibly can be.